Good evening and welcome to the Job Search Solution, the radio program where we talk about looking for a job, changing jobs, changing careers, hiring. And as always, we begin with a prayer. Dear God, grant us thy peace and thy mercy. Thy will be done. And in this session, I'd like to discuss, I got asked this yesterday by a candidate, rather young candidate, had a couple of years out of school. He asked, how do I decide about a job? The average person in the United States changes jobs 10 times by the time they're 40 years old. We really don't do a good job of directing our career and finding a career that we all ought to be able to do. That's another discussion. But when you get a job offer, keep it simple. Now, I'm not a career counselor. I've placed more than 12,000 people in a job since I've been doing this since 1973. And I'm not a career counselor, but I can give you some really good questions to ask yourself when you go to get a job or take a job. So the first thing is, do you like the nature of what the company does? Do you like the nature of what you'll be doing? If you put me in an accounting job, I would be a lousy accountant. I'm terrible at it. So the nature of what I would be doing isn't to my capabilities or to my aptitudes. They're just plain not there. So you answer that. Do I like the nature of what I'm going to be doing? 2, can I do the job? Is there a very good balance of risk and challenge to the job? And you have to ask yourself that about the risk and the challenge. There's got to be enough risk for it to be a challenge. It can't be so lackadaisical and so laid back or so mundane that you're not challenged by the job, because you'll get bored. And frankly, you won't do very well if the job isn't challenging. And only you can answer that for yourself. But is there a right amount of risk and challenge to the job? Am I well aware of the company's stability or position and stability? Is the company stable? It's okay if you go to work for somebody that isn't stable. And a lot of companies will tell you, we're not stable. I don't have a problem with that. But realize what you're getting into before you make that commitment. The instability of a company may very well be worth the risk of doing it. If you can maybe hit a home run. I remember the first 2 candidates that I placed with Netscape 100 years ago left because the company was unstable. The second 2 that I placed there became multimillionaires. So you've got to ask yourself, is the company's stability there, and at least know what you're getting into? Is the chemistry of the people appropriate? Do I get along with everybody? You spend a lot of time at work. There's got to be the right kind of chemistry there. And you have to be able to judge that in the interviewing process. If you don't genuinely like the people that you're going to be working with, you're probably not going to do very well. Now, you can go overboard in that regard sometimes, and you can like them too well and not pay attention to what they're doing and not have a very good experience there. But you've got to make sure that the chemistry is there. Is the compensation fair, reasonable, and commensurate with the job? Only you can tell that. But are you going to feel like you are you're being paid fairly? Is it reasonable, and is it fair? Is the opportunity for personal growth in keeping with your personal goals? If you don't grow personally in a job, you won't do very well. You've got to find some personal growth within the job. It's got to be a personal challenge and personal growth. All the money in the world won't make up for personal growth. Is the location and the territory appropriate? I mean, you have to drive 30 miles one way, 35 miles one way. It might be worth that. We've placed people in situations like that, but you got to think about that over a long period of time. Is the philosophy of doing business compatible with your own personal philosophy? And you've got to think about that. Lots of companies don't have a philosophy, don't even tell you what it is, but you can get an idea of what the philosophy of a company is by talking to enough of their leaders and enough of the people that work there. But think about it. Is the philosophy of doing business compatible with my personal philosophy? If they do things that you can't personally subscribe to, then you're not going to do very well in the job. Does the opportunity build on my previous experience? In other words, can you progress in your experience with this job? I've seen so many people over the years, they go from one thing to another thing to another thing, whatever's kind of hot in the market. They go from construction, they go to mortgage, they then go to insurance, then they then go to all kinds of, go to work for their friends. They go to all kinds of crazy things. And they're not building, the opportunities don't build on the experience that they've had. And by the time they get to 40 years old, they're jacks of all trade and masters of none. They've done so many different things. They haven't done any one thing really, really, really well. And you got to ask yourself, does this job build on my previous experience and point me in the right direction? And then lastly, is it likely that this experience will carry over to my future goals? Can I see myself in this job or in this company on down the line? Is it going to build on what I've done before? Is it going to make me a better person? If there's not going to be much growth in the job, you may very well want to think twice about it. So that's a primer. It's not complicated in many ways, and in many ways it is. But if you ask yourself those 10 questions, my experience is if you get a yes answer to 7 or 8 of them, it's probably about as good as you're going to get. If you get 10, holy moly, that's really, really, really good. So think about that. It's real simple. It's real easy. Well, it's not easy, but it is really simple. All right, we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned. This is Tony Bashara with the Job Search Solution.